Okay, so I'm going to start off with the acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge and respect the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we are meeting upon here today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationships of Aboriginal peoples to country. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia present here. And a big welcome to everyone. It's tough coming into a webinar on a Friday of the first week of school going back. So well done everyone, those who are attending live. I think by now, having gone through the pandemic, most people are familiar with Teams navigation, but I always like to keep this slide in just in case you're not. I have enabled reactions for this webinar and lots of people have already given me a thumbs up, so that's great. If you don't know where reactions are though, they've changed their symbol since I did this slide, so I better take a new slide, but it's the smiley face up the top that's reactions now. Okay, one last tip before we get into the webinar, and that's if you're struggling with just one screen, and I know some people don't have the luxury of having multiple screens. If you're trying to follow along at the same time as see what I'm doing, you can split your screen. So if you're on a Windows machine and you press the Windows key, that's this one here, and the left or the right arrow, then that splits your screen. So that might be a handy tip if you're working on one screen. Now, before we do get into the webinar, I've just got one warm-up question to see how your week was, because it is week one. So I've just launched a poll in Forms. If you can just let me know how your week was, and hopefully it was one of those three choices. Oh, it's a split of them. Oh, lots more people were saying it was super, so that's great. Oh, well, only 8 responses, but still. Okay, I'll close that down. Now, today's webinar, I'm going to talk you through OneDrive and just give you some information about it first. And then we're going to go straight into the practical side of things. And I'm going to hopefully talk you through and walk you through some things around OneDrive, which might be useful for you. So I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Right. Just one thing to mention, I am trying to monitor the chat at the same time as do the webinar. Sometimes though, I get carried away and don't see the chat. So if you do have a question, please feel free to come off mute and just chime in if you've written it in chat and I don't see it. Okay, so OneDrive is a desktop app and it's also an online app. And we're going to start in the online space. So if you can do this with me, this is great. So I'd love you to open up a browser, and then our starting point when we're looking at Microsoft 365 apps is always www.office.com. Now, I just thought, because I don't often do this, but if you are using the EdPass portal, you can get to that site directly by clicking on this Office 365 tile. Or if you're not, you can just go to www.office.com and I'll just type that in the chat as well. And then if you can just give me a thumbs up again, once you've got that website open, that would be great. Thanks, Kelly and Tanya. Just give people a couple more moments to get that up. Okay, well, I might move on, even though some people haven't given me a thumbs up, because I'll just give you some information about OneDrive while I'm just waiting for those last couple of people to open it up. So OneDrive is basically an online cloud storage system that is the space where you can store all your work files. We'd like to, or Microsoft likes to call, oh great, we've got some more thumbs up. Microsoft likes to call OneDrive the me space, and Teams, if you're using Teams, is the we space. So the me space OneDrive is where you put your files that you're working on, that you're not collaborating too much with other people, whereas Teams, Microsoft thinks of that as the we space where we can collaborate with other people. So to get to OneDrive from this homepage here, if it doesn't appear in the side here, you just have to click on the apps, and then it might show up like it does on mine here. But if it doesn't, you can click on all apps, and then you should see that nice cloud symbol somewhere near the top. So let's go in there. That's good. So when it opens up, you'll see something similar to this. If you've never used OneDrive at all, you might find that you don't have much here. If you've used it by mistake, not realizing that you've been using OneDrive, you might find a whole lot of .1, .2, .3, .4, .5 coming down here, because that means you've probably created something, saved it in OneDrive and not realized you were using OneDrive. A couple more things to talk about with OneDrive. You've got 1 terabyte of space in here. So that's quite a lot of space that you can use to store your files. Anything you do save in OneDrive, you can access from any device, wherever you are, as long as you've got internet connection. So I used to be one of those teachers prior to OneDrive that had about 10 USB sticks. I was forever forgetting which USB stick I saved a file on. I put one through the washing machine once. I was one of those people. When OneDrive came along, I got rid of all my USB sticks because everything is in one place. I don't have to worry about where I've saved stuff. It's all in OneDrive, and I can access it from whatever device I'd like to. You don't have to, but I've got OneDrive on my telephone, my mobile phone, which means if I want to take a picture of student work, for example, I can take a picture on my phone and then put it in OneDrive and upload it to the right file straight away. So it's really handy. Okay, so another thing to mention, Microsoft's environment has been assessed by cybersecurity as being safe up to sensitive. So you are allowed to put files up here and save files up here up to the sensitive level. Now, sensitive is pretty high up. Above sensitive is secret and top secret, and no schools have secret and top secret files in them. So you're pretty safe saving things up here. You will read information around conflicting advice around what kind of stuff you can save on OneDrive. Most of it is because if you save stuff on OneDrive, it's easy to share things, and then you might not know who's been looking at that file. So there is some guidelines around, or some information around that, but know that if you're careful, just like when you drive a car, you put a seatbelt on, OneDrive is completely secure and up to that sensitive level. Okay, what else do I need to remind you about OneDrive before we get into it? It's probably the main bits of information, except that you do have the possibility to share a folder or ask for a folder to be shared with people outside of the department in OneDrive. So our tenancy is quite close. There's only a limited amount of apps, Microsoft apps, that you can share with people outside of the department. Teams, you definitely can't, but OneDrive, if you've got a business case, so say you need to share some files with governing council members, for example, you can put a ticket into the service desk and ask for one particular folder in your OneDrive to be made shareable with people outside the department. So just something to keep in mind if you need that particular use case. Okay, so on my training summary, the first activity that we have is syncing OneDrive files to your computer so that you can access them from File Explorer. Now, I said very briefly at the beginning that OneDrive is a desktop app and a web app. So the desktop app of part of OneDrive is really being able to see what you've got in OneDrive on your desktop. Now, it's really easy to do this. However, I would advise that you don't just go syncing your whole OneDrive, because unfortunately, the computer guys who had to re-image my computer did that to me, and now I've got a big issue because I've got no space on my computer drive. So normally I would just sync one folder. So this folder here is a folder I use all the time. So normally I'd just recommend syncing one folder, the folder that you use all the time, because it will, even though it's not saving things directly to your computer, it will take up space on your computer when you sync. I'm just going to though go into, I might just create a new folder and show you how to sync. So I'll just do this new one and call it OneDrive Webinar. And let's press create. So if this is the folder I want to sync, click on that. And then up the top, I've got this option here called sync. And when I click on that, mine might come up with an error because I've run out of space. But hopefully yours doesn't. We just say cancel, close. And then when you open up File Explorer, you'll see appearing in File Explorer something called OneDrive. And if your computer is syncing, like mine, you'll see those pop up. So for example, if I go back into here and I go back into my File Explorer, you'll see here, apart from that new folder that I just created, I've got, let's just sort them by name. I've got on my computer under OneDrive the same folders that I've got on the web. So if I go into that folder that I use all the time, I've got all those folders there. And I might just split my screen. So if I go in there on the web, you can see I've got, or I should have, all those folders here that I've got here as well. So 360 cameras, 2022, etc. So all those folders and files I can access from my File Explorer on my computer or from the web. Now, why would I want to sync my OneDrive to my computer? OneDrive has some funny tweaks to it. So for example, if I wanted to delete this folder here in OneDrive on the web, I can't just click it and go delete. It might let me, but it shouldn't. If I go delete, it tells me I can't because it's not empty. So that can be really frustrating. It means I have to go into that folder, delete everything in that folder before I can delete the actual folder. Whereas on my desktop, if I wanted to, I can just click on that folder and press delete and it's deleted. So it's much easier to work with the files that you've got in OneDrive on your computer if you've synced it, rather than working on the web. Now you might come up with an issue syncing. Sometimes computers don't have the right version of OneDrive installed in them, in which case you might not be able to sync. The other issue is if you've clicked anywhere and said create a shared, what's it called? I better go check. So in Teams, a couple of months ago, there was a new feature that popped up, and it had a nice big visual raindrop telling us that it was there. And so lots of people clicked on it. So if you clicked anywhere on add shortcut to OneDrive, you're going to have an issue syncing as well. So unfortunately, if you did that, it's very hard to sync. Yes, so you can have two OneDrives. On my personal PC at home, I've got my department synced, and I've also got my own synced, so that I can work with my personal files and my education files and also save and swap between the two of them. Okay, so now that I've explained syncing, I'm going to move back into the web and I'm going to do a bit of a tour around what you see here. So I'm just going to go back into my files, which is my top view. And I'm first of all going to have a bit of a look at the different views we've got. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, if I click there, I've got some different views. So at the moment I'm in list. If I click compact list, it's going to squeeze it down a bit. If I click tiles, it's going to give me like an icon. Now, if I want to view lots of photos, the tile one is the best one. So you can see here I've got a photo and I can straight away see what it is. I can see here as well, that's a PowerPoint, but it's given me the first slide, etc. So that up the top, the tile view can be quite handy, especially if you're not good at naming your files and you want to see what it looks like before you click in it. So that's the views there, but I'm going to go back into list. You'll notice around here there's a few things. So I've got my file name, and just like in File Explorer, I can sort it in alphabetical order, etc. I then have a modified column, so it tells me when I last accessed and changed something in that folder. And who did it? So if I'm sharing the file, you might find that instead of your name there, you've got a colleague's name, the size or how many things are in that folder, and whether it's private or shared. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that OneDrive is the me space. However, you can see here I've got some things that are shared. So sometimes it is handy sharing a file with a colleague. You don't want it in a team, you just want them to have a look at it, for example, rather than work on it, in which case you might share something that's in your OneDrive. One really nice thing about OneDrive is that if you go in and you have shared this one, you can see I've shared it here. You can see I wasn't the last person that modified it. If I hover over it, I can actually see that it's been viewed 21 times, and then I can go in and see who viewed it. So there was 10 people that have viewed it, and I get their names and that it's been viewed 21 times. So it's quite nice if you see the file's been shared, that you can see who's been looking at it or who's gone in and edited it. Okay, I'll just go back again though, because now that we've gone over here a little bit, I'm going to go up to that top section here, where we got some possibilities to create some things. So the first thing up here is the new, and when I click on the button down, I've got a whole lot of things that I can create directly from in OneDrive. And if I create them directly in here, they're going to save into OneDrive as well. So I'm going to just start by creating a Word document. Now, whenever you create something in OneDrive, it just gives it a generic name. So that's why I said that if you haven't used OneDrive, but you've used it by mistake, you might find a whole lot of documents named document 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you won't have a clue what they're about. So my first bit of advice is if you do start a document or a PowerPoint or anything directly from OneDrive, is you go up and you click where it says document and you give it a name. That way you know what the document's about. So let's give this one a name. Webinar OneDrive. And it's a doc, and I just click off and there it's saved. Okay, so I've created that new document. I'm going to go back because I'm going to try and stick with the training summary. So there's a few more things that I need to show you before we share this file. So I'm just going to close that down. And then in my OneDrive, if I scroll down, I should see that file that I just created. So I called it webinar. Or if I go to recent or modified, it should come up top. OneDrive webinar, webinar OneDrive. So there's my file. I've renamed it. It's there and it's just had one view, me. Okay, so we created a Word document, but there's also all these ones that you can create directly from OneDrive. This Visio is, if you're unfamiliar with that, is for doing like flowcharts, or diagrams. The next option is upload. So you've got two options to upload to OneDrive. You can, if you've got a file, so let me just go back into my file explorer. So you can, if you've got a file, just simply drag and drop it across. And you'll see it's uploaded, and that one's not named very well, but if I go down here, I'll see that picture one in here. Let's go to tiles. There's that picture one that I uploaded directly, so you can do it that way. In which case, if I wanted to, I could highlight a whole lot of pictures and drag them over at the same time. Or you can click on the upload button and upload files or a folder, and that just goes to your desktop. So if I click here, it will just bring up my desktop, and then I can go into those pictures again and choose something else to upload. And then hopefully it's saying it's loaded, and there's that image there. The sync we talked about, so if I was to press sync in the My Files level, that would sync everything. So again, just be careful that you don't sync things that you don't use all the time, because it does take up a bit of space on your computer. And then the automate is around Power Automate. So I'm not going to go into Power Automate. This is fairly new to appear up here. But this is around creating something called a flow that will automate some kind of task or use something that you've saved in OneDrive to create something. So for example, it might take an Excel spreadsheet that you've saved and create an email from that Excel spreadsheet or something like that. So that's what that button's about. Okay, so we've gone through that. Right, so what happens if I accidentally delete something? So let's delete this. If you do, don't stress, because on the side here, we've got this recycle bin. So you can just find what you deleted by mistake, click on it and press the restore, and it will come back in the My Files space. So there it is again. Now your recycle bin, things stay in your recycle bin for 30 days. So you've got 30 days from when you've deleted something to when you've realized you've deleted it for restoring it. I've got a question. Does it auto save documents in the cloud as it does in the desk? Yes. So Julie, you don't have to worry about pressing save. And in fact, you won't see the save button if you're using any of the Microsoft apps in the web browser. Okay, so you've got 30 days in the recycle bin. However, if it's after 30 days and you realize that, oops, I deleted that really important file, you can put a ticket into the service desk and they should be able to retrieve it for another 60 days after that initial 30 days. So again, if it's something really important and that month has lapsed, that's an option. Okay, so now that we've done the creating, we've done the restoring of the deleting, let's have a look at the sharing. So I'm going to go back into that OneDrive Word document that I created. And I'm going to put in a table first of all. So let's do this, insert table. Let's do it as 2 columns and 11 rows. Name and favorite. Okay, so I've got this document and I want to share it with some colleagues because we're just doing a brainstorm about what colours would look good if we were to repaint our classrooms. So up the top there, in the top right, there's a big button called Share. So that's what I'm going to click on. And then I'm going to click on Share again. Now, when you open this up, the default you can see here is the Can View view. That means if I was to get this link right now and send it to people, they can see the document, but they can't do any editing. So that's fine if you want people to be able to look at something but not change anything about it. But most of the time when you're sharing a document, you probably want people to do some input. So first thing is we want to click there and change it to Can Edit. And then here it says people you specify can edit. So that's fine as well. If I keep that there, here I need to add in the email addresses or the names of the people that I want to share it with. That's the safest because if someone shares it outside of that list, they won't be able to access it. You'll get a notification. However, if you want to share it with a whole bunch of people and you don't want to type in all their email addresses, I'll just go back one step. If you click here, it gives you more options. So I'm going to click here. And then the one that's means you don't have to enter in any email addresses. It's people in the Department of Education. Now you'll notice in our department, the anyone option is always grayed out. That means that you can't share it with people without an @schools email address. You can share it with students though if they've got an @schools email address. So we picked that one. It's can edit, so that's good. And then we're going to click apply. And then you can again put in people's emails, or you can just click on the copy. And then you've got to click on copy again. And then if I now put that into the chat, if you click on that link, you should be able to come in to that document. I'll give you a moment to see if you can click on that link. It will take you out of your OneDrive and into my document. So it will open it up in Word. But hopefully I can get some people clicking on that so that we can see what it looks like when you're sharing a document. Excellent, fantastic. So you can see when you do share a document, you get a little indicator of where people's cursors are. I can see up the top here as well. I've got people in here. So at the moment it's 3, 4, 5 people. And if I don't know who they are, it should let me hover over the top and then I can read the person's name properly. If you are working with students and you're sharing one document, I would advise that you either put the students' names in before you share the document or you add an extra column. So let's add an extra column. Insert to the left and put in numbers. Whoops. And then if you just give everyone a number, whoops, that again makes it easier so that you don't get people typing over the top of everyone. Okay, excellent. You'll notice there's no save button as someone before asked. So this is saving automatically. Do students have OneDrive? Yes, if they've got access to an @schools email address, they have access to OneDrive. So if you are working with students and they do know their @schools email address, it's really great because even if they don't have a device that comes to school and goes back home, if they've saved it on a school device in their OneDrive, when they go home, they can log in to office.com with their school's email address and access their work from home. So that's really nice. Okay, so we're in, that's great. Everyone, if you hop out now, that's fantastic. Because I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back into that, or I'll go back into, first of all, my list view. And then we've got that OneDrive webinar. So I've just shared that. Let's say I changed my mind. I don't want you guys to have a look at that document anymore because we're not painting the classroom anymore and I don't want you to be upset. So if I hover over the document, go to the 3 dots, I've got something called Manage Access. So I can click on that. It shows me the links again. And it's got this nice button at the top that says Stop Sharing. So if I click on that, Stop Sharing. Now, if you were to click on that link again, you should get an error message saying you don't have access. Okay, I've got another question. Is it important to log into OneDrive Cloud with your school's email address? Not. Yes, Julie, that's a really good point. So if you are working in the corporate world you might have two email addresses. So you'll have your @schools email address and your sa.gov.au email address. Because as corporate people, we're working with teachers and people in schools all the time that don't have an SA.gov account, please use your school's account, because you won't be able to share documents that you've saved in SA.gov with people with @schools email addresses. So please try and use your @schools if you're in the corporate world rather than your SA.gov when you're logging into Microsoft, anything Microsoft. Does that make sense, Julie? Hopefully it does. Okay, so I've stopped sharing that. And then say I realise I want the document to go back to how it was before, because I didn't mean to share it. I didn't want people adding things. So when you save documents in the cloud through Microsoft, there's something called version history. And that's where you can restore a file to a previous version. So again, if I hover over that file, go to the three dots, I should see down the bottom something called version history. And if I click on there, I can see at the moment I've got two saved versions. So number one, if I want to restore that, I can click on that. Should open it up again. Now my one's opening it up on my Word on my desktop rather than in the web. And if I have a look at it, oh, this one was saved when there was nothing in there. So that's not a good one to restore, but we restore it anyway. So I can have a look, see what it's like. That hasn't restored it. There's no new version here. And in fact, I'm just going to close that. But if I don't even want to check what it is and want to restore it anyway, if I click on those three dots again, I can go restore. Say OK here. It says it's locked. It's no good. Restore. So version history. Oh, this one's got lots of versions. So say I didn't like my version 12. I want to restore my version 11. Double click, click on the three dots and go restore. You'll see it's created a new version. So it hasn't gone over the top of this one. So if once I've restored this version here and it's created a new one, I realize, oh, it was version 12 that was the good one. I can go in, click on the dots again and restore the correct version. So version history, when you restore, it doesn't delete what it's already saved. It's all there for you to restore. Now, this is really handy if you're working with students and they decide or they say, oh, help, I'd written all this essay and I pressed delete and I closed my computer down and now I've opened it and it's a blank document. If they've saved it in OneDrive, quite often you can go in, use the version history and hopefully restore the work that they've lost. And if they're telling you fibs and they didn't actually do that, it should have saved in version history. Okay, so version history is really helpful. Okay, I think I've covered most of the things now on the web. So I'm going to go back to the desktop client version. So my File Explorer. So again, this is relevant if you've synced your folders, and I'm just going to go through and explain what these symbols mean. So let's go back one step here. So if you have synced it and you've got your OneDrive showing here, when you click on the different folders within this OneDrive, you'll see some status symbols here. So at the moment, I can see that this is saved on OneDrive and it's not being shared. If I go to, what was that folder? If I go to, oh, sorry, it is being shared. So if I go here, you can see this document here is being shared with someone, whereas these ones aren't. So the person is that the file is being shared. Now, you can save something so that it's always visible on your computer. What I mean by that is that if you're working at a site or you have to travel lots and you're not sure that you're going to have internet access all the time, but you want to be able to access a document that you save to OneDrive, you can do something so that you can work on the document offline, and then when you reconnect to the internet, it will just upload the changes. So let me just find a document. Where did I save the other one? It was just in OneDrive, wasn't it? You can see I need to work on my file management. Okay, so this one here, actually here, that green tick there means that it's always visible, but I can just right click on there and I can go to always keep on this device. So if I click this, mine might not work because of my space issue, but that line there, once it's synced, should change to a green tick. So if you've got some documents that you work on all the time, you want to save them in the cloud, but you want to access them quickly from your computer and make sure that you're able to see them and work on them even if you don't have internet access. Again, it's the right click on the particular document or the folder and then choose the option always keep on this device. And then the next time you join the internet, it will sync. Now, I think that's for that. So the last thing only applies if you've got Microsoft 365 installed. So the desktop apps that are part of the Microsoft or M365 rather than Microsoft or Office 2019. So if you look at your icons and if they look the same as mine, you might have M365. If they look slightly different, you might be out of luck and you might have Office 2019 or 2021. But anyway, we have a look. So what I want you to do now is we're going to open up just a desktop Word document. So I'm just going to click on Word. And I'm just going to go to a blank document and I'll put in a table again. Let's insert one that's 3 by 10 again. So this is all in my desktop version, but you can, mine's, well, I haven't saved it yet. But in your desktop, you can work on documents that are saved in OneDrive as well. So let's put in some headings to my columns. And you probably can't see what I'm typing, so I just enlarge it a little bit. So this is my next document. And this time I'm going to go File and Save. Now, if you've got the M365 version, hopefully yours looks like this. If you don't, but you've synced, you can still access OneDrive from clicking on this PC. But if you have synced your computer and you do have OneDrive and it is M365, you can just click here. And then you've got access to all those folders that you have in OneDrive. So this time I'm going to click on the OneDrive webinar folder, and I'm going to put in here party food as my title. So I'm going to click save. And then now you'll notice at the very top, it was turned off, but now autosave is on. It's got that little icon telling me that it's saving at the moment. Excuse me. And I can also share it. So I can go to share. And again, even though I'm working on my desktop, and it might not let me do it, I want to make sure that I've got the edit. I want to click here to choose who can access. So again, the easiest one without adding people's emails is people in the department. Click apply, click copy, and I will type it in, but we're running out of time, so we might not go in to this one. But just like we did with the one that was on the web, if you click on that link, you should be able to come into that one that I've just created on my computer, unless my OneDrive isn't working, which it might not be. So yeah, exactly the same thing. You'll notice as well, oh, excellent, some people are in there. If I go to File again and save a copy, I've got something called Sites showing. That's basically just my teams. So you can see if I click on Sites, I've got all my teams. So I can save directly to one of my teams as well from within the desktop app. Okay, so excellent. I'm going to close that, but if you're still in there, you'll be able to go it. It's still working it. I'm going to go back to my OneDrive Online. I click in there now. There's that party food document that we just created in my desktop. I can see Ben was the last person that did something in there. Click on the three dots or hover. I can see who's been doing what. And again, if I click on the three dots and do version history, providing someone isn't in there at the moment, I should be able to do that restore. So just like I did on the web, I can do that on the desktop if I've got M365 apps installed. Right, and I think that brings us to the end. So we've gone a little bit over. I normally end by showing you some resources. So I'll quickly do that, but feel free to jump off if you're in a rush to get somewhere. Actually, I'm just going to open up my Chrome browser because I've got them bookmarked there. So bear with me for a moment. So the first one that I like to point people towards, and I might be biased, is our YouTube channel. The reason is because my team creates lots of videos that are specific to our environment. So sometimes when you're searching for things on the web, they say that you can do something, but in fact, because of how our tenancy is set up, it's not possible. So that's why I point people towards that. So if you are looking for some further help on syncing, for example, and unsyncing if you sync the wrong folder or file, have a look there. We've got a playlist that is just on OneDrive as well. Whoops. Here. So you can have a look at that. Oops. And there's a whole lot of short videos that will guide you through that. I'll post that, but that's in the handout, I think. And then the very last place is the Microsoft Learn website. which has a whole lot of learning paths. Some are specific to educators, but there's a whole lot of resources about everything Microsoft on there as well. So if you go to Microsoft Learn, make sure you create an account so you can track your learning, and then go to Educator Centre Professional Development, browse all, and type in OneDrive. Oh, it doesn't have any results, but normally there's some training that you can do. If I go to just outside of the educator, so this is for everyone, not just educators. Should have something in there. Yeah, so using OneDrive in Microsoft 365. That's probably the one that's the most useful, or this one here. Yep. Okay, thanks everyone for hanging in, especially being Friday of week 1. Hopefully you learnt something in the webinar that you can take away and might make your life a tiny bit easier when you're managing files this year. Please feel free to send me an email if you need any support or anything, any questions, and hopefully towards the end of next week I'll send out a link to this recording as well. And I'll stop recording here, but I'll carry on, I'll stay on the line and answer those few questions.